Hey everybody, can you hear me back there? Yes, I don't want y'all to miss that. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Crockett. I'm from the Myrtle group, Columbia, South Carolina. That's my home group. My sobriety date is March 23rd, 1991. I do have a home group. And I'm here to tell y'all those are some real important facts in my life today. If they weren't facts in my life today, I'm sure I'd either be locked up or covered up. I'd like to start by thanking Jay for asking me to be here. Thanks to the committee and all the people that work there. Thanks to James back there. It's such an honor to be here. And I'm so grateful to be standing here as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd like to thank Samantha for her wonderful message. And my man, Jeff. Jeff is so kind. He took the pressure off of me today. I saw him at the elevator, and he said, since I talked, I just wanted you to know that you didn't have to worry about being the best speaker. He said, that'll be okay because you can do a 4-step. But I'll tell you what, I want to thank you enough for that great, beautiful message straight to the heart today. Thank you, Jeff. And I'd like to thank all the people in Alcoholics Anonymous that came before me. Because I know it's due to their tireless, relentless, unselfish devotion. This fellowship allows me to stand here tonight and give a message of hope. And I thank you. Bill Wilson said we don't always come closer to wisdom by reason of our virtues, but that our better understanding is often rooted in the pains of our former fathers. And I thought, what in the crap is that? I'll tell you what it is to me. I didn't exactly always see the light, but I sure as the devil felt the heat. And he brought me here because I wanted the heat off. So if you're sitting there tonight because you want the heat off, or maybe you've been in Alcoholics Anonymous for a while and you think Alcoholics Anonymous may not work for you, then I got a message for you tonight. My message is that I am a real alcoholic, as described in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a real alcoholic who has recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, known as alcoholism. And the fact is that you can too, if you have the capacity to be honest, open-minded, and you can become willing. Now I'm going to try to explain that tonight by telling y'all my story of how I was, what happened to me, and how I am today. First speaker I ever heard in Alcoholics Anonymous, a man named Myrtle. And I had to give him one of Buck's speaker things when I was out there trying some control drinking. I wasn't doing real good with that. I overshoot the mark a lot. I ended up drunk, laying on my couch, laughing and crying and listening to Buck. Telling myself, if I ever get as bad as old Buck, I might quit drinking. The truth was, I was as bad as old Buck. And Buck said in his talk that I had that he didn't understand people that said they never had no fun drinking liquor. And I could relate to that. And it was listening to Buck's story that made me identify with the fact that I was an alcoholic. My daddy told me when I was real young, he said, son, you're going to dance, you're going to have to pay the fiddle. And y'all, I danced and I danced. I didn't have nothing left to pay no fiddle, really. When I got there, I found myself quite alone in the closet with a gun in my hand. And the fun drinking liquor to me was over. I was born in a little small town outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, named South Pittsburgh. I'm the oldest of 6 boys. I had one sister. I was named after my granddaddy. He was Big Crockett and I was Little Crockett. And he used to take me with him everywhere. I love my granddaddy to death. My mama told me my granddaddy drank a little. And he might disappear for 2 or 3 days, show back up, full of guilt and remorse, tell the family how sorry he was. I I never saw my granddaddy drunk. But when I was real young, he got me to promise him that when I got older, I wouldn't drink liquor. Well, I promised my granddaddy that. But that was a promise I couldn't keep. My parents, I say, they were the most lavish people I'd ever seen. Because they had beautiful friends, and they drank, and they partied, and they carried on all the time. And I couldn't wait to grow up and be just like that. In this small town we lived in during school we lived in town, and in the summertime we had a cabin out in the country on Battle Creek. We had a big sand beach out there. We stayed out there in the summer with our cousins. Battle Creek came out of the mountains, the water was ice cold in July. And all I remember about growing up was feeling very loved, feeling very secure. When I was 12 years old, that party my parents brought just ended. And they got divorced. And my mother would take all us kids and move to Chattanooga. She had to get a job, you know, she had to work. She had to go back to school and become a teacher. And at this time, my daddy took bankruptcy, and our house burned down. And my whole world just turned upside down in a very short period of time. And I got to know some new feelings. I got to know about anger, bitterness, and resentment. I got to know my good buddies, insecurity, and fear. First time I ever drank any liquor, I was 13 years old. My mom was having a dinner party, and we were over at one of the guest homes with their kid, and it was a little small 51-room mansion out on Tennessee. And then this big place, this man had a big room, and it stocked full of every kind of liquor and liqueur and anything you can imagine. So we were home alone, so we jimmied the lock open, got in that room, and looking at all these beautiful balls and everything. We didn't know what we were looking at, you know. But we found a gallon jug of Tennessee White Light. That's what we took to the kitchen. We lined us up a bunch of jiggers, going to drink like cowboys. I had about 5 shots of moonshine and all hell. I knew immediately my people drank like because I had been metamorphosized from some kind of soup. Very large and in charge. Every bit of Clinton and me was gone. But it got out of hand right away. I mean, I think it started with a food fight in the kitchen. People were going down with laundry shoes. Clothes on. I'm the oldest one there, I'm 13. We got a little sick on that moonshine. It was a long night. The next morning, my mom and I was dressed like this. We were going to church. Now, we're whiskey tables. We get to church. The priest started that morning, you just happened to be on social drinking. Well, I didn't think it could be if it was done in moderation. Well, I said, that's it. That's the deal on this drinking. Moderation. Moderation ain't in my DNA. I'm 15 years old, moved down to Rome, Georgia to live with my dad. He had started a business. He had remarried. He would have 2 more boys. And I started going to school there, joined the football team, and all the football team got together at one of my uncle's house because he was going to let us drink. So we all get over there, and we get a wash tub, and everybody brought what they had to drink and poured it in the wash tub. Gold 45, cherry vodka, moonshine, whatever it was. And all went in there, we poured a little tomato juice in there. Called it Bloody Mary. We got a little bloody too. I came to the next morning, you know, where am I? I'm in the hospital. My jaw was broken in 2 places. My teeth knocked out. My dad's been out of town. He's on the way back on business, and I am grounded forever. I tell you what, I get my jaw broken in again like that, but we drank every chance we got. every chance we got, we drank. And when we were 18, we were allowed to drink at home. We partied with my parents. I thought everybody ought to live like that, you know. And when we were all living together there, if it was the weekend and the phone rang, my daddy wouldn't even say hello. He'd just pick the phone up and go, city or county. He said he had 5 cars and never made a payment on them. I'm sure that's true, because I rented a couple of them myself. But I studied hard when I was in school, high school, played sports, did that double life, you know. And I could get by with that. And 2 weeks out of high school, I'm off to the University of Georgia. I am so excited about going to the University of Georgia. It was like a dream come true for me. And I was going to the University of Georgia, and I was going to do well. I was going to make my family proud of me. But I'm a budding alcoholic. My daddy dropped me off in Athens and left me with a checkbook. Shame on him. The first quarter, I went to class and studied. I made A's and B's. The next quarter, I had met some older boys that were in these fraternities, and I went to class some, made C's. The next quarter, D's. Spring quarter, went on a little road trip, and 10 days later, back to school. I had all WFs. They had me to leave the University of Georgia, but I didn't. No, I hid out. I was over this apartment complex, and I'd been drinking and partying for about 3 days. Man, I was standing on this balcony smoking a cigarette, and I felt really bad. And I was looking across the parking lot, and I said, my God, that man right there looks just like Daddy. Yeah, it was him. I'm going to use the language he did. But I'll tell you what the gist of it was. The party is over. Tell me the University of Georgia was not a 4-year nightclub. That's restitution to me. So I had to find a job. So I found me a job working at the paper mill outside of Rome in the wood yard, swing shift. Now, being at the University of Georgia, drinking liquor and chasing girls, working swing shift in the wood yard was a shocker. Wow. That was an eye-opening event. I went with my dad, and I told him how I knew what an opportunity I had just gone away, and how sorry I was. And I knew these things were dead, and I really wanted to go back to school. He said, you should go back to school, and I'm glad you won't go back to school. And maybe you ought to go on down to the Rome Bank Trust Company and see if they might lend you some money. I'm a favorite fiddler, so I go to the Rome Bank Trust Company, and they gave me a college loan. First of many college loans. I think I paid all that back when I was about in my 40s. But, you know, when I got out of working in the wood yard, I had met some boys from Rome. They had a college there, and they had a fraternity, and it existed just for one thing. That was to raise DEW. I fit right in there, you know. So I started going to school there. And I met a girl when I was there. She was a year ahead of me. She graduated, and we got married. What I can tell you about my marriage is I pretty much just had a hostage. I mean, I didn't want to be married. I wanted to keep acting just like I'd been acting, you know. But out of my marriage, I have 2 children. I have a son and a daughter. And I'm so proud. I love my children so much. I had a deferment from the services during Vietnam. And so they came up with a lottery system to see if you were drafted or not drafted. And they threw your birthdays up, and if you were picked over about 162, you probably weren't going to get called for the draft. So we had a big party the night they did that the first time. And My birthday was the second one they picked. That's the only lottery I've ever won. I went down and joined the Marine Corps Reserves because you could get into the Marine Corps Reserve. They had a big tank unit there. And I didn't understand that. You couldn't get any of those other reserves unless you knew a congressman or something. And I didn't understand that until I got to Paris Island, South Carolina. It became abundantly clear to me when there wasn't no waiting line there. I'm here to tell y'all I had 12 weeks continuous sobriety at Paris Island. Happy hour there. When I got out of combat training, there was a job opportunity for me. And it was perfect for me. It was commission selling on the road. I could be my own boss. I could make my own hours. I could get drunk when I wanted to. I could work around the hangovers. If you're halfway good at that, you can get away with anything. And I was halfway good at that. In 1972, my brother Gary and I would move to Columbia, South Carolina, to open up the branch for this business in the Carolinas to see how we can do. We didn't have any accounts in Columbia. And we didn't have a place, so we had to look around. Found a place, really nice, right next to the Green Olive Topless nightclub. Right across the street. It was an ideal location for a hardware business. Back then, if you want to find us, you better check in at the Green Olive. Especially on Friday night. So back then, we were like weekend warrior drinks, you know. We worked during the week. On Friday, we pretty much stayed in the coma Friday and Sunday afternoon. But I remember one night we were in there back in Squeaking Days. A lot of y'all remember. But we went in the bathroom, took our clothes off, and she's freaking out into that topless nightclub. My brother broke his toes on the bar. He rode around that old green shag. 1974, my daughter was born. The morning she was born, I remember standing in my mama's living room saying, I think I'll take another drink again as long as I live. I knew intuitively then that I was in trouble with alcohol. You know how long it lasted? About a day. And back then, we suffered a lot with brainstorming. They were always coupled with hungry. So we had this brainstorm. We were going to go buy a motorhome, get all our many friends we could piled up in there, fill it up with all the liquor and other illegal outside issues, head off to Colorado snowskin. So we did. And I passed out before we got out of South Carolina. They woke me up in Memphis. Memphis was frozen over solid like probably Columbia is getting tonight. And they woke me up and said, get up, Aunt. It's your time to drive. Oh, Lord. So I get up there to drive, and somebody's thrown up all over the dash. The bath was broken wine, and I started driving into Arkansas. Blue light came on. I said, oh my Lord, we're going to all go to jail now. I pulled over the side of the road. It was the highway patrol. Had my ex-wife with him. We was up there at the gas station. Had her sense. I'll tell you my troubles all. I was coming on Thursday. He had everything in the world stacked up in there to eat. Chicken, steaks, lobsters, shrimp. He called them 3-day eat-a-thons. We called them 3-day drink-a-thons. And we'd have all our friends over there. Sometimes we'd have 20 to 30 people over there and had these big parties. We had some fun then. And 1979, my daddy came into work, sat down at his desk, and he fell dead of a heart attack. And he was 56 years old. I was not ready for that, y'all. But my daddy was like a high power to me. I idolized my dad in a lot of ways. And he had been a highly decorated dive-bombing pilot for the Marine Corps in World War II. And he was a hard drinker. I don't know if my dad was an alcoholic or not, but he had a lot of symptoms. But I never saw him miss a day's work. And Lord, I miss him so much, still today. And the day goes by, I think about it. And after that, my alcoholism just shifted gears when Daddy died. And I started going to bars all the time. Every day, we'd go to the bars. I didn't get drunk every day, but most of the time I did, and a lot of times I didn't even go home, you know. In 1982, my son was born. I have a little Crockett now. Little Crockett was premature, and that scared me to death. When I'm scared, I gotta go drink. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to the hospital to check on things. Well, they didn't want to see me at the hospital drunk at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I remember getting in a row with the security people. When I came to the next morning, I was freezing. I was up under my wife's hospital bed. There was a nurse standing there. For some reason, I just reached and grabbed her by the ankle. Like a space shuttle. I was in the neonatal unit. I turn around, here comes my brother Gary to the door with a doctor's coat and a stethoscope. Nobody's allowed in there but the parents. He's carrying on a conversation with the head of the neonatal unit. Yes, Dr. Hammond. And she asked me where he practiced, and he said out of the silver bar and grill over there. It always did. He lived out on Lake Murray. That's a huge lake. We used to stay out on that lake. Drunk, driving those high-powered speedboats. Thinking about that today, you know, it's scary. And we've been out there one Saturday, and we've been drinking all day and water skiing, drinking and water skiing. We come off that late that afternoon. We said, man, let's have a party for everybody. Cook some cold tenderloins on the grill. Like we ain't been having one for 10 straight hours. So they had a store, a food line that was opening up, a grand opening up close to us in Lexington. So we said, let's go to the food line because it's a grand opening and they'll have some really good deals, right? Grand opening. So we get up there. They got the balloons up, the flags up. We get in the back. This is in 1982, y'all. Dadgum tenderloins were $9.99 a pound. I said, that ain't no dadgum special. It ain't even special at all. And I was right by and my brother said, just get the meat, man. So we get up front with this young girl up there, and she's talking over the PA system. Reading off special. Clorox, 89 cents. Scott tissue, $1.09. I said, give me that microphone. I'm going to show you a special. I said, ladies and gentlemen, we here at the food line to appreciate your business and to show you customers for the next 30 minutes. All of the beef here at the food line is 39 cents a pound. And we left. They said that place went up in smoke. People just took their buggies and dumped it out in the house. Everybody rushed the meat man. His fights broke out. My brother, he said, man, you gotta get up here. They got a war out. He said, the warrants were inciting a riot. Serious. So we go see the judge. We know the judge. We walk in there. He said, I knew it was too soon. I heard it. I got to get over there and start apologizing. man's been in here 3 times already this morning, I cannot live it. Get him a straight back. And we go apologize, but he ain't ready for an apology. And that went on for a while, but we caught the plea. They dropped the charges, but we can never re-enter food line. I'm going there all the time. 1985, I got pulled over and charged with my first DUI. We've been out to lunch, had about 24, 25 grams of wine. One of us looked up and said, you know, why don't we get out of here and go somewhere where we can get something to drink? We left there, and I had a hot rod, and I passed the Lexington County Police line. And they stopped me and charged me with a DUI. And I was really mad about that. I got me a good lawyer and was able to get the charges reduced. And I said, you know, why do they got a bar on every corner and a liquor store on every corner and a cop right behind it just waiting on me to come by? You know what the truth was where I was in my alcoholism now? I could have got a DUI every single day of the week. Because every single day of the week I was drinking and driving. And that weekend water and stuff, the weekends were fading all the way into 30. And there just wasn't much time for work, you know. And my life was just coming unraveled. In 1987, I separated from my wife when I left home. And you know, here's what happened. Things started happening in my life. It brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And in retrospect, that's just clear as a bell. I signed up to play in this golf tournament, charity golf tournament. And they had a big get-together in the local bars, a big room in the back. And they had free liquor, you don't want to miss that. So up there at the thing, they had the pay bar out front going on, you know, on the bar. And I see this lady sitting there, and I was really attracted to her. And I, even though they had free liquor, I went over there and asked her if I could buy her a drink. She looked at me and she said, I don't think you want to buy me a drink. I thought, yeah. I know what she was saying. She didn't want to talk to me all night. So it wasn't any need for me to buy her drinks. She was drinking White Russians, and I didn't know what they called. I said, bring her a White Russian. They were $7.50 back then. I had to borrow money to get out of there. I was talking to her, tell a story. We've been laughing for, I don't know, a couple of hours, drinking liquor. I looked at her and I said, I've been looking for you all my life. And she choked and spit her drink out. She looked at me and she said, you know, I hadn't heard that since the 3rd grade. Oh, shoot. We got to be buddies, and we were drinking buddies, and that was great. We were having a good time together, and that was all great. And then we got to be a little bit more serious, and we couldn't drink together. We'd start off fine, start drinking, and we'd end up in an argument, and that happened a whole lot. And in 1988, I got invited up to Charlotte, where her mama lived, to go over to McCaddenville, where Debbie had grown up as a child, Christmas Town, USA.
Yeah.
No, most of you know where McCaddenville is. And so I went up there. But you know, it's Christmas. It's one of the 3 legs of the alcoholic triple crown, you know. And so I had been drinking for about 3 days. I went to Charlotte. I don't remember leaving Columbia. So I came to that morning. There I was. Where am I, you know? Trying to find out I'm there at Mom's house. And that was straight. I told Debbie, I said, now you tell your mama I just came down overnight with the worst case of the flu you had. Now, she's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know nothing about Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know nothing about no A&A. And the aircraft and me. I didn't know nothing about that. I was laying there, my stomach was, I was sick on my stomach. And a little bit, she came in there and she said, son, you need to sit up and take a drink of this. This is real good for the blues. She had a glass of orange juice. I thought, man, if I put that orange juice in my stomach, I am going to throw up on her sheet. But I sat up and I took a little sip. I said, God has sent me an angel. Well, she put a little vodka in there. And y'all know how that'll cure that particular strain of the flu. I stuck off to get me some more to drink, you know. Got me a little bat wing, stuck it down my back pocket. Started feeling like a big shot. Oh, take everybody out to eat tonight. So we go out to this fish camp. They serve martinis down there. I didn't see no lights that night either. Every time to pay, I didn't have the money. She had to pay. Wasn't making a good first impression. About 3 days before I saw the lights, Christmas lights, back in Columbia, I soaked up and I felt really, really bad about how drunk I had been, how I acted. And I knew one thing for sure. She was wanting me to get away from her daughter. I knew that. And it was Friday, and I put on, it was cold right now, I put on my coat. I felt something on the inside, and I reached in there, and it was a letter. She put a letter down in my coat. Now, y'all, this is the first real touch I have with Alcoholics Anonymous. In this letter she put in my coat, first thing she thanked me for coming and said I'd helped her. I didn't remember cutting no grass. No dishes. She went on to speak about how she had learned to live life on life's terms. And she said that anger and bitterness, guilt and remorse, fear had dominated her life. She had found a way to live where that wasn't the case anymore. And she talked as if she could see inside of me, and see everything that was going on. And then she said she wanted me to come back. She told me that she loved me. And she said she felt as if God had put me in her life and me in her. And that just stunned me, overwhelmed me. I couldn't even imagine how anybody could care about what was going on with me. And I spent the next year driving her crazy. I just drunk my car up at midnight. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I put up with a lot. I love her so much. Later on, we would get her to move to Columbia, and she stayed at our house a lot. You know, we were always together. I talked to her every single day, and she was like, it's a huge, huge part of my sobriety. And she would take us everywhere. She introduced us to people. We went to conferences all up and down the East Coast. We met people. She started right in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And God, I miss her so much. If I got asked to go somewhere out of town, you know, to speak, so when we were together, before I would come speak, I would call her. And I'd say, Mom, you ready to go? Speak at the podium now. I wonder if you could tell me something spiritual. And she'd always say the same thing to me. Go dogs! She'd do it every time. In 1989, her daughter and I decided we'd buy this house together. It was a 2-story house. She had her story, I had mine. And the war was on. I went off to one of the Georgia football games that fall, like Lewis was already talking about, it taking 3 days to get there and another 3 days to get home. Well, I was coming off of one of those vents, and I was coming unglued. If the phone rang, I'd have jumped out of my skin. I couldn't even look out the window of my house. I was assuming fear. So I said, I just can't go on like this. I can't go on anymore like this. So I knew I called Alcoholics Anonymous. They said, we're going to have a man call you back. The man called me back, asked me to come to the club downtown Columbia, get Debbie to give me a ride down there, and I get out. Here's a man I drank liquor with. I know. I hadn't seen him in a long time. And when I last saw him, he had businesses, he had money in the bank, he was flying off to Italy. And here he was 6 months sober, living in a halfway house. He lost everything he had, including his family. And you know, I could believe that he had lost everything. But I could not believe that he ain't had a drink since. But he took me that day, and we stayed together all day. We went to several meetings. He introduced me to his sponsor. I said, well, I want you to be my sponsor. He said, I can't be your sponsor, Crockett. I'm not sober enough. And I thought, my God, what have they told me? You ain't had a drink in 6 months. You ain't gonna get no more sober than you are right now. But immediately, I love the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God for the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, that was such an attraction to me. But, they had suggestions. I didn't like the suggestions, especially that one about not drinking. I thought that was very extreme. So I've been wiping up a sober for a while, and I called him up and he said, I've been thinking about this. For the rest of my life, I can't go out with my girl, have dinner, and have a glass of wine. And so we argued about that for a little bit. And then he said, you know what, you need to do whatever it is you need to do. And he hung up on me. So we went out, had a glass of wine and a meal, and it was perfect. Just like I thought it'd be. 2 weeks later, I'm drinking it by the case. Decided, well, I'm going to only have natural wine with my meal. So I'll become a chef. Around the clock. Wine with everything. So that didn't last long. I'm back out this wide open as I ever was. I come in at midnight, I'm drunk, Debbie's mad, phone rings. And that could have been a phone ring at midnight, is it? So, my brother Chris calling me to tell me that our brother Grant had just been murdered in Mobile, Alabama. He had gotten into it with a man who was blackout drunk. He had a 9mm pistol and put it up to his head to kill him. And he was 36 years old. He had 2 little girls and a little boy. That just broke my heart. I got on an airplane, immediately drunk. Debbie went with me, flew to Mobile. It was chaos. And she got really freaked out, and she left in the middle of the night in a cab. I didn't think I'd see her again. And, I've been to some real low places, but at that time it was about as low as I ever got. I became very homicidal, very suicidal. And I drank night and day for a good while. After a little time, Debbie and I decided to try to reconcile. We got back together, but we weren't kind to each other. She kept a dadgum suitcase packed all the time in the trunk of her car. 3 years sober and Alcoholics Anonymous, that suitcase is still packed in the trunk of the car. I go by there and look every now and then, yep, this ain't working. we're sitting around the house one night and everything seemed fine, you know, but, you know, you could cut the tension with a knife. She said, I'm going to the store to get some milk. I said, when you're up there, will you bring me a nutty buddy back? She said, yeah, I'll get you a nutty buddy. But she didn't come home. So I went looking for her. I was going to kill her out now. Thank goodness I didn't find her. And next morning I was sitting at my breakfast table looking out the window drinking a Budweiser for breakfast. One of her bosses pulled up the driveway. He got out and came in. He said, I just came over because Debbie didn't show up from work this morning. I hadn't heard from her. I said, let me tell you about Miss Debbie. I said, we were sitting down here last night and everything was fine. And she said, I'm going to the store to get some milk. And I said, well, would you bring me a nutty buddy back? And I ain't seen her since. He looked at me and said, you know, that thing's probably melted by now. The next year is 1991, and a series of things would bring me back into Alcoholics Anonymous. The first one is I was invited to a fashion show my daughter was in at the school. I'm a little early, so I stopped to have a drink. I can't have a drink. I get drunk and go down to the school and start up this big row at school. Buries her to death. She didn't want her daddy around and think she was doing anymore. And y'all, I hated myself for doing that. I hated myself for doing it. And the very next week, I get drunk at this bar I go to, and I'm falling down in the parking lot. I'm so drunk. And the law gets me. They know me. They took my car away from me, enabled me, let me off. The very next weekend, I started on Thursday night with drinking over at this bar in the mall. Drink all night long. Drinking into the next day, which is Friday. Debbie headed for the hills. And it was Friday night, so I get in my hot rod. I'm going down this 2-lane road, Myrtle Drive, doing, I know, in excess of 100 miles an hour. And I passed the Lexington County policeman again. I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw him turning around. And so I didn't stop. I just kept going. I got down behind the crow. I was hiding out like, you know, I was invisible. Well, they surrounded me. I informed them that I was not going to jail. I got the fire beat out of me that night. I observed it when I got out of jail the next day. I claimed police brutality. So they had to assign a detective to the case. And they did an investigation on me. I mean, they talked to my neighbors, they talked to my ex-wife, they had Debbie in there a long time. He had a file on me, a thick file. I said, my brother did some of that stuff. He pointed out to me that every single thing in that file was alcohol related. Now, I hadn't gotten in trouble every time I drank, but there it was. Every time I'd been in trouble, I was drunk. And he started talking to me about his drinking and how it had just about destroyed his life and how he had come to out of a blackout in San Francisco one time, been there 3 days, and didn't even know how he got in there. I looked at him and I said, man, you need to quit drinking, didn't you? You know, I didn't drink after that. For a time ago, I didn't drink, and I know what was a moment of clarity in my life, where I saw my life and saw me as I really was. And I could see that everything that meant anything to me was just gone. It was gone or going out the door. My relationship with Debbie was ended. Respect for my children was ended. My business was bankrupt. So I'm selling my property on the courthouse steps. I hadn't filed taxes for 5 years. I was in a lot of trouble with the law. My health was terrible. When I felt pretty good about me, I wanted to kill you. When I felt the other way, I wanted to kill me. Other than that, everything was pretty much all right. So I made an appointment to see a physical priest. And And I kept it. I went down there, I was talking to him, I don't know, a couple of hours. I saw he had a big book on the shelf behind him. We talked a long time, and I was completely honest with somebody for the first time. He said, I don't think I can help you. He said, I tell you what, Crockett, there are people that can't help you, and they will help you. They're in Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, we had talked about that. I say you got to be God's address. That Saturday, Debbie in the meeting, she said, you would like to go? And I said, yes, I want to go. And I went in the meeting, and I picked up the white chip that night. That was March 23rd, 1991. And I began to do every single thing y'all suggested I do. I got a big book, and I started reading that big book and studying the best I could. I met a man from the Bronx, New York. He was in my home group. He had 28 years sobriety, and asked him if he would sponsor me, and he agreed to. And with this man, I took the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and when I did, I had a spiritual awakening. And to me, that means a beginning. I began a whole different life, a whole new life. I entered into a spiritual journey. Somewhere in my alcoholism, I had become convinced that I was dependent on myself for everything. And what that did was created me a huge amount of self-centered fear that acted all kinds of character defects and absurdity. But on this spiritual journey, I began one day at a time to rely and trust in God. I turned my will and my life over to the care of God, so I understood Him. I carried away the wreckage of my past, and I started giving freely of what had been so freely given to me. And a miracle happened for me, and alcohol became a moot point in my life. I know I'm not cured of alcoholism. I know what I have is a daily reprieve, but it's contingent on my spiritual condition. I must maintain spiritual growth. I know I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Alcoholics Anonymous. I know I owe a huge debt of gratitude to God. How's a man to pay a debt of gratitude like that? I can only tell you how I try to do it. I try to do it by practicing the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and everything that I do in my life just the best I can, one day at a time. I go to meetings with Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll read and study our literature. I'll allow myself to be sponsored, and I sponsor other men. And I firmly believe it says there's nothing that will ensure our immunity from drinking any more than intensive work with other alcoholics. I'm married to one, and that gets pretty intense. I already told y'all I love the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Y'all people are my guideposts, my touchstone. I believe that God speaks to me through other people. But I got to be awake spiritually to hear it. If I stand here tonight and try to tell you how I am today, I say that's virtually impossible for me to put into work because it has to do with unseen things. And I'm not about to stand up here tonight and take any kind of credit for my sobriety, because I believe with all my heart that my sobriety is a gift from God. And it's a gift that I must spend the rest of my life trying to give away in order to keep it. When I came here, I was a man that was motivated and dominated and greatly paralyzed by fear. I had a fear of impending doom. It was right around the corner. It was coming, and it hung with me all the time. But I can tell you today, that deep down inside of me where the truth abides, I have this feeling that everything's going to be all right. It doesn't matter what happens, as long as I trust and rely on God. I can tell you something. My relationship with Debbie got a lot better. And I lived in the sobriety, we got married. And we're still married. She she's right here on the front row. She's the very best part of my life. Way the better half. And I can tell you, my children are both married. I have 5 grandchildren now. I love my son-in-law. I love my daughter-in-law. I had 3 brothers that's sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. Except my brother Gary, the one I speak of, was my partner for 50 years in business, and my very best friend. We were joined at the hip from the time we were little. He got cancer. He passed away on 9/11, 1921. That was like part of me that, you know, I'm so you know, there was a man in my home group that used to say, when I first came, he would say, always say, y'all have loved him back to life. And I thought, wonder if his wife knows that. Anything about it. No conditional love. But I do today, and to me, unconditional love means a personal goodwill toward all. And that was impossible to me then. It's not that. It was the unconditional love of people that would bring me to the love of God. And when I got there, I was able to love myself, and I was able to love you. And I'd like to close my talk tonight with a quote from Emmett Fox. He was one of our earliest contributors. He was like one of our literature people we had a big book. It speaks to the power of the love of God. There is no difficulty that enough love will not conquer, no disease that enough love will not heal, no door that enough love will not open, no gulf that enough love will not bridge, no wall that enough love will not throw down, no sin that enough love will not redeem. It makes no difference how deeply seated may be the trouble, how hopeless the outlook, how muddled the tangle, how great the mistake. The sufficient realization of love will resolve it all. Thank you all, and God bless you.
I'd like to thank Crockett for speaking and the readers, and we're going to sit down and we're going to end it with the Lord's Prayer. Thank you.
Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory,